Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real thrill to be here and to have the time to be able to observe what's happening and experience some of what's happening here in downtown Las Vegas, and also to really investigate and think about what it means to build citizen power, and to think about the power that that might have to change our communities in the future and for the better. We've spent some time over the last few days thinking about what some of those tools are for building citizen power, and I want to add another tool and another resource to the list. So let's kind of imagine together that every neighborhood, every block in the entire country has a resource, this sort of hidden resource. And it's a resource that can help us address our toughest challenges like healthcare and education, engagement, and help us build healthier, more sustainable, more equitable communities. Imagine that this is a tool that we all have access to that can help us express our voice and build agency and equity in the places where we live. Well, that's true. Every neighborhood, every block in this country does have that resource because every neighborhood has artists. I always spend a bunch of time trying to think about if I can get through this entire talk without saying the word artist, because I know what happens when I say it. I know what you think of in your head. I know the images that pop into your head. They look like this. We mostly think of artists as a cartoon character in a beret, apparently. Usually a man, or possibly a baby, I guess. I know that these are some of the images that pop into your head, and even more importantly, I know that most of you don't think of yourselves when I say that word, artist, that most of you don't claim that as part of your identity. So if we think of artists at all, we think of them as these sort of cute cartoon characters, or only slightly better, we think of them as sort of special and exotic. We think of art as something that belongs in a theater or concert hall. We reserve it for special occasions or kind of school-mandated field trips, things like that. Somehow we've lost this kind of human, visceral connection to our own creative capacity. We've lost the way that creativity and art can connect us and make culture and make place. So let's take that away. And let's start over with a new definition of what an artist is and who artists are. Let's start maybe with Alan Capro, who's an artist, with his definition of art, which is that art is the weaving of meaning-making in our everyday lives. The way that we make meaning from our everyday lives. So I think that's a really good place to start. So I hope that you'll start there with me and we can build a new definition of what art and artists mean and what some of the things they can do for our community. So artists can get people to show up for things, even really mundane but very important things to the life of our community. So for example, the way that we normally gather community input on things like safety or traffic calming or those kinds of things, or we have these, I'm sure you're familiar with the format of a community meeting in a church basement with a 2-liter of warm Pepsi and 4 stale cookies and 5 angry people who are the same 5 angry people that come to the meeting every single time. What if instead an artist designs a block party that has food and activities and ways of engaging people? Who might that bring out? Who might show up to lend their voice and their help to their community? Artists can get us to talk to each other. I guarantee you're gonna have a different conversation with your neighbor if there's a giant puppet of a dog walking down the street than if you're just passing each other on your way to work. Art can draw people and attention and dollars to the places and causes that we care about in very tangible ways. Art can help us reimagine space, even spaces that might be vacant or unloved or unlovely. I think there are great examples of that here in downtown Las Vegas right now, where art and place are helping us reimagine what a downtown could be. Art can help us think about our infrastructure in different ways. This is an artist named Kristen Murray who declared herself artist in residence of a bus stop. She sat there for several weeks talking with her neighbors, engaging them in activities, and generally helping people think differently about what a bus stop could and should be. Art can help us navigate complex system change and challenges. This is a group of artists, including me, shooting a series of hilarious videos about the Affordable Care Act, because we need artists to help us break down these complex ideas, to help us understand and navigate them in simple and easy to use chunks. Art can help us connect to our neighbors, to make people in our community visible. This is a project by Kathy Much-Pao and Katie Ka Vang, who did a project at a restaurant called Letters from the Thai Cafe, where you came to the restaurant and you wrote a letter and you took a letter, really simple. But you left not only with a stomach full of a delicious meal, but you also left with some knowledge about another person who lives in your community, somebody else who makes up the world that you inhabit. Art can help us gather input and ideas. All of these projects I'm talking about are simple. They include simple tools. They're not big public art installations or big productions. They're projects that include chalk and paper and balloons and bubbles. This way of gathering input can be really powerful. This is a project by an artist named Oscar Lee who worked with an affordable housing developer over the course of a year. And so a really typical challenge when you develop affordable housing is that a developer finds a site and they say, this is where we're gonna put this new housing development. And then they have to do all kinds of things that are necessary to that process, like raise money and go through all the pre-development process. So they've said, we're building something, and then nothing happens for a very long time, sometimes years. That site just sort of sits fallow. And in the meantime, they've said to the neighborhood, we're building affordable housing here, and often the neighborhood reacts with fear or concern about what that will mean for how that might change the place that they live and love. So Oscar did this very simple project where she engaged the people in the neighborhood on that site in asking them their idea of what home is. What's home to you? Which both created all of these moments for people to come onto the site, to see some momentum, to feel some energy moving forward, and also provided these really important reminders that what is going to happen at that site is eventually going to be someone's home, not just a bricks and mortar development and not something to be worried about, but something that was going to provide really important homes for a lot of people. Art can be a gift as simple as a flamenco flash mob in a convenience store. Art can help us heal. This is a project that invited people to write something they wanted to wash away on the sidewalk and then wash it away. Again, really simple materials, it's just water. Art can help us imagine the possibilities. This is a projection and a live dance on the facade of a vacant building to help a neighborhood really imagine what could be possible if someone took on that building and tended it and loved it. The Knight Foundation, in partnership with Gallup, did this great piece of research called The Soul of the Community, and every time I look at these pictures, I think about that research. They went all over the country, all communities of all different sizes, and asked people what attaches you to your community, what makes you committed to this place, what makes you want to contribute and stay in a place. And over again, the answers were always the same. And they weren't the things that you think they are. They weren't safety or politics or even the economy. Over and over again, the three things that attach people to their community are aesthetics, social offerings, and openness. So aesthetics, is my community beautiful? Social offerings, might I be walking down the sidewalk and happen upon a projection and a dance right in the middle of my city? And openness, does my community reflect the people who live here? Do I feel comfortable and welcomed in the place where I live? Those are the things that artists do. Aesthetics, social offerings, openness, that's what artists do. And yet often we don't call it that. The other research that I always talk about is this study that the Wilder Foundation did for Blue Cross Blue Shield, where they were able to research and connect that social connectedness, how connected we feel to our neighbors, and particularly across power differentials, like we've been talking about this week, actually contributes not only to our community's health, but to our individual health. So when an artist like this, her name is Diane Elaine, writes a song called the Light Rail Shuffle, that has a Zumba dance that goes along with it, that is a fun, beautiful, joyful song and dance, but is also about the way that when we built the interstate highway system, it went right through the heart of the African-American neighborhood in the Twin Cities, as it did in a lot of cities. It is a way for her to express her own voice, to have powerful, productive action in her community. And it's also a way that brings people together across all kinds of, in this picture, there are children from the neighborhood, business owners, Diane, someone from the Regional Rail Authority, and a person who is on the city council for the city of St. Paul, all doing the light rail shuffle together. And I guarantee you have a different relationship with people, no matter what their job is during the week, if you've done this silly dance and worn the hat. Because art can connect us to a common cause and make us feel like we're a part of something. It can reflect our community back to us. I'm sure we've all had that experience where you're driving in a car and you can have a really hard conversation with your spouse or your child or your friend. Because you're driving, you don't actually have to look at each other. Art can help us do that too. This is a community collage by the artist Laura Youngbird, who invited people to cut and paste together. And what resulted was not only a beautiful piece of art, but also a reflection of the many hands that made it and the people who made up that community. Art has this power to make community visible, to make the people in a community visible. So if you sit at the farmer's market and illustrate what people are buying and their recipes and then share them, does that give people a different sense of connection, a different sense of the people who make up their community? Or if you spend a week going up and down the street collecting people's hopes and dreams, their wishes for the future, and then slip those into fortune cookies at restaurants all up and down that corridor, or reflect those, or project those fortunes onto the side of the building, does that give people a different sense of the people who make up their neighborhood, the people who make up their place? And does it give you a shared sense of collective dreams and wishes? Does it give you a shared experience, like these 3 generations of women who all wearing silly hats and getting their photo taken in front of a historic building? They might have a lot of differences in their daily lives, but now they've all had this shared experience. What does it mean if you notice that someone in your neighborhood has spent weeks or months installing pieces of stained glass in a chain link fence? Does that give you a different sense of what's possible, of your own power to change something that is maybe unloved or untended in your community, your own sense of your responsibility to take action? This is the definition of art that I'm interested in. These are the ways that art makes meaning in our lives, in our everyday lives. And this definition, where art is relevant and useful and important, but not special. Important, but not special. That's the definition of art that I'm interested in, and that's the tool and the resource that I think we have the power to use. But to do that, we need mechanisms, and we need systems, and we need ways of connecting with the existing creative people in our community. This is a project we started a few years ago called Community-Supported Art. It's based on the community-supported agriculture model, except for instead of vegetables, you get art. And the whole purpose of this project is to build relationships in the community, to connect people to the people in their community who make their things, to understand more about the creative process and the creative producers that live in your neighborhood. So we need those mechanisms, but we also need this different definition of who gets to call themselves an artist. So this is my invitation to you, to call yourself an artist, because we need this different definition if we're all gonna tap into this collective creative capacity. If we're gonna have more artist and entrepreneur, artist and developer, artist and author, artist and teacher, artist and mom, artist and dad, artist and farmer, artist and neighbor. Because we need more art and community development, art and healthcare, art and education, art and economy, art and place. If we can do that, if we can develop these mechanisms, if we can change the definition of who gets to call themselves an artist so that we all tap into that collective creative capacity, and if we can find the ways that art can intersect and support and be more fully integrated into the challenges and opportunities of our community, into the causes and the infrastructure and the communities that we care about, then I really think this beautiful future is within our grasp. We have the power collectively to imagine and to create communities and futures that are healthy, equitable, and vibrant. So we already have all the tools we need. It's time to get to work. I have presents. So in case you still need a little help, a little more permission to call yourself an artist, I did bring you all a beret. I'll just put them here. There.